the government have got themselves into bed with some pretty serious boys. And I think what's happened is, so these boys have gone into a meeting and they've laid out their demands in order to get a return, to invest into the country or whatever, however they've done it. And I think they've pushed them in directions in the budget, okay? They've set out what they've expected from the Labour government. The Labour government have not fully realised the implications of what they have agreed to. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the latest episode of Farming Funny with our top sheep shagger from Castle Douglas, Nicholas Thompson. And weighing in an extraordinary 84 pounds from the prime town of Windsor is our ginger wizard, Sandy Kirkpatrick.
What a welcome, Jim. 84 pounds. That means I'm about 4 stone.
I know.
84 kilos more like it. I'm putting on a bit of timber these days, mate. Don't
you weigh what my right thigh weights, mate.
just give me 6 months. I'll be back up to fighting weight. I'll be all right.
Do you know? I'll give you a laugh, mate. And it is laughable. Obviously, I'm a bit of a bigger lad, so I'm rocking in 127, 128 kegs at the moment, right? And when I'm sitting watching international rugby, you see some of these brutes coming on, and it's like 121 kilos. I'm like, I could take you.
Fuck all on me.
If we did a straight run, the laws of physics suggest you're going to go that way, and I'm going to go with you.
Well, we had to weigh all our calves before they went away. Before someone came and bought them the other day, and Dad goes, "Oh yeah, just jump on the scales there," and it was like 112. I was like, "Holy fuck, man, what is going on here?" But
you're not 110 kilos, Nick. Are
112, mate. But I'm sheer muscle.
Well, I was going to say it's pure.
I've been working hard lifting these bags. Pure muscle, mate.
Do you know what's quite funny though, Jim? Though, I remember reading somewhere some lads in the gym was like, I sort of benchmark for strength is you should be able to bench press your body weight, squat 1.5 times, and deadlift 2 times your body weight. And I'm thinking, fuck me, that's nearly 250 kilos for you. Deadlifting 250 kilos. That's a lot of weight.
No, Jim does that as a warm up.
Give me something to do with my other arm, would you?
Yeah, my man.
Is that squatting? Is that squatting on one leg or something? Like,
a one-legged squat, yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you, mate, if you were putting away 180 kilos in a squat, you'd be doing pretty well, pal.
I know. I get it quite a lot because I'm like naturally I've got a big set frame and I think I went to the gym for like 3 months when I was like 20 or something, like 21, and like see the amount of people that go to the gym that are like, oh mate, what a gift to have your frame, and oh you could be massive, you could be huge, and I'm like, the thought of that's a nightmare. I mean, I'm struggling with shirts as it is. I'm not needing to be walking into Giacomo's being like, well, this is it for the rest of my days, man. Phoning up Levi's to see if they'll make jeans that are 45-inch waist and everything. I'm like, that's embarrassing. Like,
funnily enough, nobody says that to me, though, Jim.
You still shop at Baby Gap.
Damn proud.
Anyway, Jim, talk to me about the protests. Where do you think we're going to go from here? What do you think the government's call are? They seem to be sticking their heels in. Where does the industry go from here?
You know why they're sticking their heels in? This is a theory and it's not confirmed, so this is my own personal opinion. The government have got themselves into bed with some pretty serious boys. And I think there's been private financing. Some big investment firms in America.
BlackRock.
Now, these guys are serious boys, right? I like the biggest hedge fund, the biggest financial asset management firm in the world. I think they've got like $14 trillion,
They own
right?
everything now.
Now, they infiltrate big time. Now, I think what's happened is Keir Starmer has made it, obvious to the world that he's part of this World Economic Forum, that they go to, in Davos, that they have their big meetings, and all these boys are there. A week before the budget, Bill Gates is, pictured in Westminster, not Westminster, at Downing Street. Okay, so I think what's happened, because if you look at Keir Starmer now, right, and you look at, if that guy believed in everything he did, he wouldn't look like a quivering mess that he looks like every time he's on TV. You look at images of him before the budget, before the election, but primarily before the budget. You look at him now. I mean, I don't know if you saw his performance on ITV the other day.
Yeah,
he literally looks like a quivering mess. Yeah. And I think what's happened is these BlackRock boys, to get to the top of that game where you get to go in and speak to governments, you are the top of your game. You are the best of the best. Now, as we're finding in politics these days, you don't need to be the best of the best. I mean, you can lie in your CV to get to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So these boys have gone into a meeting and they've laid out their demands in order to get a return, to invest into the country or whatever, however they've done it. And I think they've pushed them in directions in the budget. Okay, they've set out what they've expected from the Labour government. The Labour government have not fully realised the implications of what they have agreed to, because they're idiots. Okay, dealing with the smartest people in the world. These boys will chew them up. They'll have walked out of these meetings and whatever they've had discussions and thought, that was pretty straightforward. Keir Starmer will never go back on anything he's done, not because he won't, because he can't. And I genuinely believe there is much bigger fish at play here. I mean, BlackRock have done a deal with Zelensky to rebuild Ukraine once the war's over. Already, Trump's coming into power. You have got the leader of Israel wanting to arrange a ceasefire with Hezbollah already. I'm telling you, we don't look at things deeper. And maybe I go in too deep, but
why would why in an era of more kind of right-wing politics and where it's very much focused on sort of nationalism and, as Trump's saying, America first, everyone else can bugger off. Why then would BlackRock be looking all over the place to try and do kind of what China have tried to do with their whole Silk Road initiative? Why would they bother doing that?
Because they can't get in the ear of Donald. They can't get in the ear of Donald Trump. They can't. Elon Musk and these boys, they're not going to listen to these lads. They're not interested. They'll tell them to bugger off. They're not going to get told what direction to run the country and that suits our investment firm. And then what do? They then go to other countries that they can. They hedge their bets, to spread their risks. That's what these boys do. They don't put all their chips on.
So how is that? Do you think that has directly led to the decision to remove APR and BPR in the UK?
100%.
For what reason?
Because they want land. They want land. They are on a massive land hunt at the moment, and they want land because 20% makes 0 sense. It makes no sense. 20% gets rid of your average family farmers in the middle. Doesn't get rid of the investors because, it's still a 20% saving on top of what they would have to pay. Okay. Now that they've pulled assets into it, why do they need to bring assets into it? Depreciating assets. Why is that got to come into it at all? Oh, all of a sudden, because you know why? That creates a bigger inheritance tax bill. So you then have to sell 20, 30, 40% of your equipment. Guess what? You can't then do it. You can't then go and buy new equipment. So what do? Okay, you might stomach the bill on... You take, for example, an intensive farm. You take some of these big boys down in England, okay? that are growing 2,000-3,000 acres of potatoes, their equipment valuations will be colossal. So not only do they have to pay huge inheritance tax, which they might be able to stomach, they then got to go and pay that tax on equipment.
Aye, it's BPR as well as APR.
Yeah, and these people down there, as much as they come across as idiots in Parliament at the moment, you can't tell me they didn't know that £1 million for a farm, because these guys all know what it's like to buy a house. It's all related, you know. If they, you can't sit there and go, oh well, I know if I'm going to send 600 grand in a house, you'll not get a farm for £1 million. They know what they were doing, so they knew by saying it that they were guided to set it at that.
You might well be right, Jim. I don't know, because I haven't looked enough into it to understand or to appreciate.
Well, go and watch it. Go and watch an interview that was. It'll be on. It's all floating about social media. The news presenter called Ben Leo for GB News, right? And he starts to expose. Now, when I did my interview for GB News, they cut me off at the very end when I then went on to talk about Bill Gates, right? Well, guess who they're now starting to bring up? They're starting to bring up Bill Gates, and they're now starting to question why he was at 10 Downing Street. The government are refusing to answer why he was there. They're then showing links to BlackRock, and they've got interviews with Larry Fink, who is the head of BlackRock, okay? And he's sitting in a room with people explaining. He tells them that what they do is they have to reshape people's thinking in order to get results. And if you can't do that, you're no use to them. Honestly, you go and watch it. It is the guy's literally saying, we are forcing you to do what we want you, or you're no use. I'm telling you, this is what they're after.
Because it sounds like quite a lot of conspiracy theory, though, Jim. Putting two together and getting 5. There might well be something in it.
Look how passionate Jim is about it. It's like he's.
No, I know.
This has been burning away in him for 2 weeks. He's desperate.
It was a long holiday in Fuerteventura. The counter argument to that, though, Jim, and again, I'm not saying you're wrong.
So here's another one then, okay? So BlackRock have got the hand in the Democratic Party in America, okay? So why all of a sudden, once Trump's about to get in, why did the American government give Ukraine the rights to fire American missiles into Russia after Putin's clearly stated that he will go nuclear if other countries get directly involved with their armory? And then guess what do Britain do? We go in after them. We give them the use of our Storm cruise missiles, okay? So guess what? So he's hoping, BlackRock are hoping that these guys retaliate into Ukraine. Guess what? More construction work. Guess what? More money.
2 things to say about that. Oh, sorry, no, not necessarily to say about that. I can't sit here and prove you wrong because I don't know enough about it. The flip side of the argument is that Labour are a socialist government, are a lot more socialist than we were probably led to believe. And they're very much of take from the rich and give to the poor, because the government is clearly set up not to encourage people to start businesses, to make loads of money and blah, blah, blah. Yet you can quite happily sit on benefits and no questions are asked. The flip side of the argument would be, well, they see farmers as wealthy landowners and they want to take from them and give to the poor.
But the thing is,
the flip side of the argument. And then the other thing I will say, and again, this is a kind of general philosophy in my life in general, that if you can't control it, then there's nothing you can do about it. So stop worrying about it.
Well, yeah, but that's how you all then go down a path of getting to a point of no return. If we all thought like that and acted like France did in World War II, we'd roll over and wave the white flag, and Hitler was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll not invade Britain."
Sorry, I'll take that back. What I'm saying is, there's nothing you can do. If you're saying the BlackRock situation is true, there's nothing you can do about it, except farmers, accept the hand that you've been dealt There's nothing you can do to change the government's mind for the reasons that you've stated. But there are a whole load of financial tools that you can use to stop it happening. So the emphasis is then put back on us to say, well, actually, if this is the case, the worst thing that we can do is not plan and end up having 20% of our land sold off. So
But
it's down to us to sort it and get it into.
Is there not something?
Whatever.
Is there not something on the government website that's kind of gone under the radar that as of the rules changes at the budget, all the rules come into effect? There is
They're issuing a whole load of. They issued the headlines at the budget, but then all the detail is coming out in January around APR and BPR, and I suspect everything else.
Well,
so but I mean, it might well be. I don't know.
I just think that we have to wake up and realize how important our industry is, and sometimes I think we forget how important it is, and we have to realize that our industry literally controls the world. You control food, you control the world. These guys are starting to understand that. Ukraine's got the biggest sources of fertilizer mines in the world.
Aye.
So if you control the fertilizer, you control the food production.
So what do we do about it then, Jim? What's as an industry, what do we do?
As an industry, we have to stand up and we have to take extra action. We have to. But the thing is, as farming, we've been very fortunate that the press have picked up on agriculture in this as the main driver, right? You take, for example, say you take a potato packing business, right? I'm just using that because I roughly know figures. And you've got a couple of pack houses, and you're really big, and you've got a lot of deals with supermarkets. You could be turning over like 100 to 150, 200 million for the last however many years. They're also going back on your books and going to inherit tax you on income and take averages from your income. So you take a business like that, okay? And then he's got factories with, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 million quid's worth of kit in them, okay? What he paid for them, which is no use to anyone else because they're all purpose built for that factory. That boy is game over. He can't find 30 million quid to pay off the government. So it's not just us. It's every single person that owns a business.
Right.
So that gives us such a strong footing. So we've got to merge that with everyone else. And I don't quite think the penny's dropped for a lot of other companies yet.
Like, this is what I was going to say, because it's the entire food supply chain, and it goes right the way up to the guys at the top, like Tesco. And
they all hand on costs. The only time that they then they'll just say, well, we'll build that into our cost going forward, and that's easy to say. But when those costs don't get picked up because the consumers stop buying, that's when the noise starts happening. So we're going to see a delayed effect of these guys coming in, creating a noise. To be honest with you, I am quite stumped as to how we take this head on. I do have a feeling that Rachel Reeves won't be there for much longer, okay? So then that questions everything about, if she goes because of her integrity, that questions everything about the budget. Is there a call for a re-budget? Yeah. I don't know. I doubt they'll change anything they do because they want to stay faced.
One of the big questions that was repeatedly asked at the rally last Tuesday, and Clarkson got absolutely, well, he was getting pelters for this as well, is in London's a prime example. There are multi-million-pound houses all around London. When everybody else dies, they pay more inheritance tax at a lower threshold. And the question was put to loads of people at the rally as to why farmers are any different.
Because
what would you say to that, Jim?
Because they don't use that house as their business. They don't rely on that as their business.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. Also, like, the person that's bought £1 million house has had a job that gives them enough income to buy £1 million house. The difference from when the majority of family farms were bought, when they were cheaper and costs were not as high compared to now, and the percentage of amount of money we're making compared to the asset that we own, it's incomparable. Like it's just like we do not make the amount of money from our businesses to buy the amount of how much our land costs. Like it's not
you inherited something from your parents on their death, okay? I know this sounds, maybe I'm looking at it from the wrong direction, and I am open to change here. But anything you get from them is a bonus to what you're already doing in your own life.
Agreed.
It's bonus income. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't get me wrong. I don't
Well,
I don't think there should be. I don't think there should be inheritance tax, because why should your parents work all that and you get 60% of it? I think you should get it all. But I do think that if your parents leave you a townhouse in London that's worth 10 million quid and you end up getting 6 out of it, and you've been able to do your job somewhere else, doing what you do, building wealth and providing for your family and having a nice house as well, it's not, they're not trying to run a business off of that. That's the difference.
No, for me, I think it goes beyond the money itself. I think it's, as you were saying, Jim, it's a lot to do about food security as an island nation. Because coming back to what you were saying, let's take the situation in where, there will be situations in where farmers have to sell off land for sudden death, or people are too old, they aren't able to inherit it in time, yada, 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 right? Who is then going to buy that land? Because it's not going to be other farmers, because they don't have the money to do it. Well, you might take a pop at it. Well, I mean, you might take a pop at it, but it will be companies or foreign investors.
Yeah.
And then you look at, and then again, there's a moral question that needs to be asked of the government and the British public as to who do you want to own your land, and where do you want your food to come from? And I just think in a world that is becoming increasingly unstable and uncertain, as an island nation, you shouldn't take your eye off you shouldn't take your eye off a basic need for society, and that is producing food.
Do you think though that they've realised that now is the time to strike because of the lack of engagement between the countryside and the cities? We're getting to a point where the numbers of farmers are so low. People really genuinely, if you genuinely been honest about it, 80% of folk in front of a camera will say they care where their food comes from, but at the same time they walk in the supermarket and buy the cheapest thing that they can, right? They don't really care. They don't care about farming. They don't really have an understanding about what's all involved. So do you think that the big guys have found that this is the right time to strike while understanding of agriculture by the general public is at its lowest? You don't think this is the time for them to come in and get as much ground as they can, I mean, without getting noticed?
I think feeding into your thought process, then yes, I think it probably is. I just think one of the things that came out of the rally the other week was, as you say, on the whole, I get the impression that the public are with farmers, but there is a clear misunderstanding as to how the industry actually works. And people don't understand that food is incredibly cheap in this country. Yes, if you're on benefits and you're using food banks, that's an incredibly hard pill to swallow. But the reality is, food is far too cheap. And as you know, when I spoke to Tom Turner about it, he was saying that is, having APR and BPR, that is the price that you pay for having cheap food in this country. So everyone, as you say, says that they're with farmers. I just think there's a massive lack of understanding as to how the industry actually works. And that is a very difficult thing to get across when a lot of the media are portraying farmers as being, oh Christ, you get 10 million quid's worth of assets sitting there. Because I think a lot of people look at it, and there's a big difference between being rich and being wealthy. There's a lot of folk think, oh, you've got £1 million in assets. That means you got £1 million to spend. But you don't.
You take
big
Scotland for example. You take Scotland for example, okay? You tell me what foods do Scotland produce?
Tatties.
Aye, so there's one.
Beef.
Well, you get cereals.
Yeah.
Beef.
But where do the cereals go?
I don't know.
Whiskey.
Beer.
Malted whiskey.
Beer.
And feeding for chickens and beef and animal feeds
into Big Jim's biogas plant.
So that but I'm being serious though. If
I know, yeah.
You know what we've got vegetables. Okay, so we've got a little bit of onions in places. We've got so we've got your standard sort of broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. All our cereals go to either making alcohol or they go to making feed for livestock. We don't actually produce that much food that's on the shelves.
No, we could do a lot better though.
And
again, I think this is part of it. Is that I don't. Whilst the daggers are getting thrown at the Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer and the Labour government for abolishing APR, I think this is the anger and the demonstration that we saw last week is a pent up or a built up anger and frustration that's been building for years, if not decades. I think there have been decades worth of neglect and lack of understanding as to how farming as a business and an industry works, and I think this is just the straw that broke the camel's back, because
it's the tipping point. Yeah,
it is the tipping point, because you look back 20 odd years and the dominance of the supermarkets, the price pressures that you've got to produce cheap foods. You've got Brexit, you've got the removal of subsidies coming out, the common agricultural policy, war in Ukraine, COVID, all of that kind of stuff. That means it's a built up. It's built up anger. It doesn't just come from one single thing, although this is a pretty big blow. It comes from decades worth of a lack of neglect from government.
Yeah.
Nick, what's your thoughts on it?
I mean, I was down in London for a reason. I think you're right. I think since me and Jim started this podcast 3 years ago, the amount of different things we've talked about, all those things you went through, including costs just constantly going up, we're just getting squeezed out from every single angle. And whether Jim's right and it is because there's big investment companies who are actually running the country, or it's just a case that people just don't care what happens to farmers, and actually it's just a way people see us, as you said, Sandy. Oh, he's got £1 million farm, he must have loads of money. It doesn't matter which way you look at it or what theory is correct, we're getting squeezed out. And actually, if we don't do something about it, the other thing they've done that's quite clever as well is they've gone, oh, you've got 18 months to sort it, and then you can pay it over, 10 years after that. So everyone's going, oh, actually, I don't need to worry too much right now. But I mean, 18 months soon comes round. I mean, that's just a lambing and a calving in a way, and we're there. So, yeah, but I think
coming round to that question that I'll put to both of you, and we'll probably finish on this. As you say, irrespective of what theory you think or believe, and that's absolutely fine, where does the industry go from here? The rallies happen, great show of support, great show of unity. By all intents and purposes, I genuinely don't think the government are going to budge on this. So what do we do? Jim?
What's the next stage?
Yeah.
Next stage is to show all these lot down there who think that by us doing this, it's not going to do anything. We need to show that we actually can have an influence on this country. And we do have an influence. The only way to do that is by forming together as an alliance and taking some form of mode of action. Unfortunately, the public will pay the price, okay? Because, yes, we get the support from the public, but deep down, they don't really care. Okay, they sit on their computer and go, oh, what's this been talking about? Oh, yeah, support the farmers. Hit enter and go on with their day, right? They don't really. So, unfortunately, in order to make it evidently clear to them how important we have to make a stand. And we have to do
Everybody defaults into saying, well, you should just all go and strike. But as we've discussed on this podcast, that's not quite as easy or quite as simple as it sounds.
No, you don't need to go and strike.
Is that realistic, or is that just again pie in the sky? As you say,
I think we'll be
it depends whether you want things to change, though, doesn't it? I mean, like, I totally understand that, and we're certainly as business in a position that if we stop trading for a while, it's going to have huge effects on us. And there's big businesses that will have even bigger effects on it. But it's like, if we get to a stage where it's make or fucking break, surely we've got to, I don't know, take a risk, and we have to do something.
Short term pain for long term gain.
Well, I agree with that. The only trouble that I see with it is, like, unlike tube drivers, if all the tube drivers walked out tomorrow, TfL couldn't run out and get another 10,000 in on Friday to drive trains. But as we saw during the pandemic, all the supermarkets are geared up and have contingency plans to source food from elsewhere to keep their shelves full. And my fear with it all is, as you say, we do finally, God forbid, come together as an industry, take a degree of action, and the supermarkets say, well, do you know what? Fuck it. I'll tap, we'll get it from the continent. We'll get it from Ukraine. We'll order a bit more from Sweden. We'll do this, that, and the next thing. Is that realistic as well?
That doesn't happen overnight.
That's a fucking scary thing to say out loud.
But it's true. All these supermarkets, Tesco, who turn over I don't know how many tens of billions of pounds, will have contingencies, will have risk plans in place for stuff like this.
You'd be amazed, Sandy.
Like we saw in COVID.
Sandy, they come on racing to me on a Thursday afternoon, need an extra load of tax on Friday morning. No, but do you know what I mean?
Really? Okay. I'm asking the question because the worst thing that you could do is for everyone to organize this and do it and put significant risk to your business and everything else for no actual impact to happen.
What do you think would happen quicker? Civil outrage and civil rioting, or these guys being able to go through all the procurement, going to source it, going to get it organized, finding the surplus that's not there on the continent at the moment, and then organizing it, get taken in and put into packers to then get on the shelves? What do you think would happen? What would happen quicker?
Well, I don't know. It depends on their.
Also, can I just say, if everything was getting brought in on boats and they genuinely were going to fucking fuck off British farmers, that would be the stage where there would be tractors at the ports literally stopping stuff coming in and out of the country.
Yeah,
so it wouldn't fucking be policeable at all.
But do we as an industry have the unity within us to do something like that? You look at all these tens of thousands of dairy farmers, no, less than thousands of dairy farmers up and down the country, who have to get milk taken away every day. Do we have the unity in the industry to do it? I question whether we do.
I think that's a very difficult one, but I think because this is not hitting individual, the reason nothing like this has ever been called into question before is because they've only ever targeted individual sectors of the industry, right? So they've got, like, the egg prices being poor, so you're not going to get dairy farmers to, like, go out and strike for the egg farmers.
They're not good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but because this is punitive over the whole industry, and everybody's going to be affected, not by hundreds of thousands, by millions, right? If you can't stand up for something and fight for it that you love, what is the point in doing it?
Yeah.
You may as well go and stop and go and get a job as a dairy herd manager for 150 grand a year. What are you doing? Because at the moment, if you've got stuff sorted out, that's fine. But I might die in a car crash in 5 years' time. My 5-year-old son is then staring down the barrel of a horrendous inheritance tax bill.
I think that's the issue. It's those unforeseen deaths and the people that can't get it sorted in time or are just too old. But one of the biggest issues, and we've kind of avoided this for a while.
one of the biggest issues is we always talked about farmers should have handed it on earlier, right? But if a farmer hands it on earlier, the values get then reset at the current rate. Now that farmer then has to live for 7 years. Then the capital gains gets then they avoid the capital gains. But if they pass over the shares on death, the capital gains gets reset at the death of your business. So there's no upscale of capital gains you have to pay. Whereas they hand them over to you, they then get a capital gains because they've handed the shares on at a value. And whereas the value gets as into what it is today as to what it was valued when they had it. But if they pass them on death, capital gains gets reset at today's value, but you don't have to pick up that capital gains. So if you went to then sell the business, the capital gains is from what it was then to what it is at present day.
And I think it's important to remember as well that if you gift something, you can't then receive an income out of it. So there has to be provisions for the people that are gifting it to ensure that over the next 7+ years, you've got a stable income. And again, they come after pensions as well.
You're talking like we're defeated already.
Well, I think it's going to be. I think it'll be really, really interesting. This is going to continue, and it'll roll on and on and on. But I think it'll be really interesting to see what's going to happen next, because I cannot see the government backing down. There is, of course, going to be a rally in Edinburgh at Holyrood. I think it's on Thursday, 28th of November, I think it is, when they're going to release the Scottish budget. So there's going to be that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Are you gonna fly up and I'll go home at 5 o'clock?
Don't give it away, Nick.
I might actually. And I think it's going to roll on. We're going to have to. It's not going to be the last time we talk about this. That's for sure.
No,
we're going to have to step up. We're going to have to step up, I'm afraid.
Step up.
And on that wet, skittery hole,
step up,
chaps,
take it to the street.
It's been Nick Thompson's dying, choking to get away for a pint. We'll call it a day there, boys. And it's been quite an intense podcast, but I've quite enjoyed it. As I say, it won't be the last time we discuss this, but we will leave it for this time, and we will see you all again next week.
Perfect.
Cheers, boys.
Cheery, bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.